So this is our extended video, and this is part one of the video. You'll get a part two, but this is just kind of a follow-up on our class today because I felt like I wasn't explaining as well as I can Tashma number 3, specifically how Rava comes back to kind of claim his point, because this is the first Tashma where every other Tashma has been kind of seemingly a proof showing that Rava is correct, and Abaye kind of comes back and shows that how maybe Rava is not correct. This is the first time we're seeing Abaye as potentially correct, and Rava needs to come back and show. And I think it's simpler, maybe even than I made it out. So again, we had, and I think we did a good job on this. So Abaye looks at this Breita and says, "Oh my goodness, what is the reason why a person can keep the items according to this Breita? They can keep the items. It says the stuff belongs to the finder." Because the owner of those items has despaired and called that stuff hefker. And so what Abaye's inference is, so this should teach us then, if the reason why it belongs to the finder is because the owner of those items has despaired, then if the owner didn't despair, it wouldn't belong to the owner. And oh my goodness, that sounds like stuff doesn't belong to the owner until the owner despairs, and only when the owner despairs and claims it hefker and not before. Um, that sounds a lot like Abaye, who's trying to show us the whole time there's no such thing as retroactive despair, as despair floating back in time, that despair happens first or simultaneously with the person being able to find it. And so this is a pretty good challenge to Rava, but Rava can challenge it in a couple ways. And I think that Yoni kind of brought up a very easy way, or not a very easy way, but a real fallacy with Abaye's argument, right? Seems to be Abaye is saying is, if A is because of B, then Abaye would say then not B is not A, right? If the stuff that belongs to the finder is because the owner has declared that stuff hefker, then if he has not declared it hefker, then it does not belong to the finder. But this is bad logic, as Yoni told us, because we can say if a dog is a dog because of its waggy tail, then if that being did not have a waggy tail, then it wouldn't be a dog. And of course, that's not true, right? So it's like, if general is because of a specific, then if it doesn't have that specific, then it is not the general thing, which is actually untrue, right? Because there might be many characteristics that make this general thing, one of which, and maybe not even the most essential of which, is B, right? Okay. And so we already see actually that Abaye's logic is a little flawed here. But actually, for some reason, Rava doesn't even talk about that. Rava really picks up on the fact that you're standing on the water. You're watching your stuff being flown away because it has, and that stuff belongs to you. Not only that, it is not flowing just anywhere. It's not flowing into the ocean. It's flowing into your friend's field. So here you see your stuff and you're like, I know that fridge, or I know that wall of my kitchen. I remember I painted it, I wallpapered it with that special polka dots. That's mine. And I can probably identify it's mine, meaning it probably has a siman. Then when it goes into the field of your friend who's probably been at your house, that friend can say, I know that that belongs to Rabbi Light. I've seen his house with those exact walls and those things. So here we have a case that it seems like the idea of siman is all over the place. And in siman, we would never despair. We would always say, oh, it has a siman. I can prove it's mine. I can go and find it. So why in this case is Rava going to tell us that there's even bringing up the idea of Yeush at all? Oh, here's the case. The case is a case of that there is a siman on the stuff that's floating away. The owner says, that has a siman. I can find it. It goes into the your friend's yard who says, oh, that has a siman. My friend's going to come and get it. But doing all that stuff really takes a tremendous amount of effort. And that tremendous amount of effort might cause anyone, even if it has a siman, even if it's totally known it's yours, they're just kind of like, what? I'll let my insurance deal with it. I'll get a new house, I'll get a new kitchen, I'll get some new walls. I'm declaring my stuff hefker. So basically, that this is a case where this is what Rob is going to say, this is a case where these items do have a siman, where I would never even claim that it's hefker. And the only reason I'm claiming it hefker is because it's just way too much effort. So don't think of Mr. Abaye. Don't think that because it says hefker, it belongs to the finder because it's hefker, is allowed to be the beginning of some kind of logical deduction that we prove the point that the concept of Yeush Shalomi dot works. No, 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 no. This is a very specific situation where I see stuff that I would normally say is mine, stays mine forever. My friend sees that same thing and they say, that's mine, that stays mine forever. However, because it just might be way, way, way too difficult, I'm going to call that stuff hefker because I don't even want to deal with the mess of it. So basically, Rava is saying, don't use your logic, Abai. It's just not going to work here. Don't use this case to prove a general case. It's a very, very specific case dealing with hefker items that actually do have a siman, and normally we would never declare Yeush over, except for this very specific situation that has to do with the tremendous amount of effort that I don't even want to deal with it anymore. So to me, this is really, and that's why Askinon says this is a very specific situation, which I think I could have explained a little bit better, right? And here's the explanation and then that's really what brings us on to our Tashman number 10, and we kind of looked at these two cases, and I just want to show you the real timeline of this and why it's so clear that this is talking about Abaye, about Rava's case, because here we have it right here. So here's kind of the case that we're kind of developing here. We've got we've got Joe, who is kind of who's been hired to help Frank the farmer. Joe says, you know what? I know it's harvest time, and you know what? I know Frank the farmer can't even eat from this stuff unless I take truma. Now, there's a couple things, right? Truma, I don't know how much Frank wants to give, but I'm thinking he wants this much, okay? And I don't know exactly which of the grain I should be using for truma. I think it's going to be this stuff. So I'm going to get this stuff together. Here's my truma, and um and and it takes me a while because I'm doing other stuff. But at 10 o'clock, I get to see Frank for the first time and say, "Hey, Frank, you're not going to believe it. I did truma for you. You don't have to go through the effort. Truma's been taken. Anyone can eat from that stuff, right?" And Frank can say, and Frank could, and now I want to know, does Frank agree or does Frank not agree? Well, Frank says these strange words, and you didn't take truma for my better grain? Now, so what does that mean? Does that mean that actually Frank is really happy about this or really upset about this, right? So that's what we kind of talked about in class. And so the Talmud says, if we can find actually that there is better grain, it means that actually Frank's good with this truma, but actually wished he had given more. If there's not that better grain, Frank is not okay and wishes that the truma didn't happen. And either case, the idea of when the truma was taken, so if at 10 o'clock Frank says, yes, that's my truma, it's as if he did it at 8 o'clock, meaning if Frank Jr. at 9 o'clock had a yummy bowl of crackling wheats, that he would not be stealing that. It would not be kind of stealing not kosher because I never took truma. It's as if I did take truma at 8. It's not like only by 10 o'clock when my mind says, yes, that truma's good. It doesn't start here and go forward. It's 4. So it's very kind of related to what Rob has been talking about, that there's a sense of whatever my opinion is now, that opinion went back to the time when it actually mattered that that opinion was. So if I gave a yes now, it was as if I gave a yes then. If I gave a no now, same thing. It would be as if I gave a no then, and then Frank Jr. would be going to jail, or maybe probably not going to jail, right? So there we have a classic case of Abaye in action. That this is very similar to the idea of Yehush Shalom Midat, but it's basically saying there is retroactive, not losing or owning, but retroactive thoughts. My thoughts kind of can move back in time. And Abaye is going to say, who has always been saying, no, it doesn't work like that. You have to have a thought, and then action can follow that once it happens. So what's Abaye going to do? Abaye is going to say, here's what actually did happen. You think you waited 2 hours until Frank the farmer knew if could tell us whether this was a good act of truma or a bad act of truma, but actually it doesn't work like that. Whenever I hired on Joe to be my worker, I basically gave him the right to make decisions for me as my worker. So it's as if when he did that action of truma, it's really as if I, Frank the farmer, did the action. So it is instantaneously calling it truma because he is me and me is he, right? Me is and he is I, something like that, right? So again, that's how Abaye comes back and says, "Yep, this is how it works." And that is what's going to bring us to really the subject of our final video, which is going to be 2 cases, one of which is really difficult to understand, and the other is an esoteric, and the answer is even stranger. Um, and um, and actually, interesting enough, that's going to be a case that's going to try to support Abaye, and Rav is going to come back. And then in our final case, we are going to see a case that with a Tashma that's going to show us that Bai is okay, and Rava really can't come up with a challenge, and so that's why that holds in the end that Abaye wins. All right, so that's part 1 finished for right now.